Well, threats before, condemnation after. China upset over House Speaker Nancy Pelosi arrived. The fact that she arrived in Taiwan, now planning more military drills around Taiwan in the coming days. Beijing saying the live fire exercises will take place in 6 zones around the island between Thursday and Sunday. NewsNation correspondent Kelly Meyer is live in Washington. So, Kelly, why is this first visit by a speaker to Taiwan in 25 years getting so much reaction from Beijing?
Well, Nichole, it comes at a time of rising tensions between the U.S. and China, and as China flexes its muscles on the world stage, not only as an economic powerhouse, but as a military power as well. Pelosi touching down Tuesday in Taiwan, putting the rumors of this potential stop to bed after weeks of speculation. Pelosi writing an op-ed in the Washington Post defending her visit, saying, quote, "We cannot stand by as the CCP proceeds to threaten Taiwan and democracy itself." She was greeted with open arms in Taipei, enraging Beijing and elevating tensions with the U.S. The White House warning China against using the visit as a pretext for military action against Taiwan. Take a listen.
There's no reason, as I said yesterday, for Beijing to turn this visit, which is consistent with longstanding U.S. policy, into some sort of crisis, or use it as a pretext to increase aggressiveness and military activity in or around the Taiwan Strait.
And Speaker Pelosi getting a lot of praise from Republicans here on Capitol Hill, including Missouri Senator Roy Blunt, saying he shared the 4 words that he never uttered before, saying that, quote, Speaker Pelosi was right. Nichole.
All right, Kelly Meyer live in Washington. We are joined now by Matt Turpin, visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution and former director for China at the National Security Council during the Trump administration. Matt, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Nichole.
All right, so China responding almost immediately with this announcement of these new live fire military drills. There's also reports of cyber attacks against Taiwanese targets. So, Matt, any threat of these cyber attacks on U.S. targets, and if so, or if not, what other responses could we see?
Yeah, I tend to think that this is not necessarily going to bleed over into cyber attacks on U.S. targets. I think what we've seen from the PRC is kind of what we expected. We would expect to see sort of military threats and demonstrations of force. The idea of cyber attacks is certainly something that Beijing has done against Taiwan before. And I think we're going to see continued economic coercion as there's been reports of the cutting off of imports from Taiwan of certain products. So I think those are all in fitting with what we sort of expected to see from Beijing.
Well, Matt, what do you think? I mean, do you think this is, maybe the final straw that China tries to use as justification to use that military force to annex Taiwan? And is that really their ultimate goal here?
Well, I think that term annex is the appropriate term to use here. The PRC has a long-term goal of annexing Taiwan and bringing it back into what they perceive to be sort of a greater China control. And I think that the Chinese Communist Party does this largely because they view Taiwan, a functioning and successful democracy, as a threat to their own legitimacy. And so that is why they seek to threaten and annex Taiwan to remove that threat from them. But of course, the idea of a large country invading its neighbor because it wants to is simply not appropriate in today's world. And so I think the United States, Japan, and other countries are absolutely right in standing up for and making space for Taiwan. We've seen, Speaker Pelosi's visit is followed on the heels of the Vice President of the European Parliament visiting 2 weeks ago. We've seen this sort of unfold with numerous countries seeking to reach out to Taiwan.
Well, let's piggyback on that a little bit, because we know that it is the first time a Speaker of the House has visited there in 25 years, but other lawmakers have made the trip, obviously nowhere near this level of scrutiny nor criticism. So just talk about why there's this firestorm now.
Yeah, well, I think, certainly the Speaker of the House is a uniquely important position. And obviously, Speaker Pelosi has a long history of speaking out against the Chinese Communist Party and highlighting their human rights abuses and their other abuses around the world. And so I think certainly the Chinese Communist Party is quite sensitive to anything that Speaker Pelosi does. And they are seeking to create pretenses for their own increased coercion against Taiwan. And so I think that's the place we should put this in. They're certainly not happy when any other member of Congress goes, and there have many members of Congress visiting. I think Senator Menendez, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has recently been. Senator Duckworth, I think, has been twice so far in the last like 9 months. So we've seen many members of Congress. And in the last administration, we saw a cabinet secretary, Secretary Azar, go. We saw Undersecretary of State Keith Kroc go. So we've seen many folks go to Taiwan because largely U.S. policy allows members of the U.S. government to continue to go to Taiwan.
Right.
Beijing doesn't get to dictate to the United States who it deals with and who it talks to.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.